Hey guys, Chris here. Today we have a range battle between two 3-row 7-seat electric SUVs. To my left from China, we have the new BYD Tang, the updated version called the Flagship, which now packs a huge 108.8 kilowatt hour battery pack. That's usable capacity. And then to my right, we have from South Korea, the Kia EV9, which is a fan favorite. And I absolutely understand that because it's awesome on the exterior and on the interior. But what's curious in this test is that the battery pack size of this is a lot smaller than this. Only, I say only, it's still huge, 96.0 kilowatt hours usable. So today, we're gonna see how far this can go and how far this can go going 120 kilometers an hour on the motorway.
Like in every range test I do here on the channel, we will be driving at a constant 120 kilometers an hour using the car's cruise control. Both cabins will be set to 21 degrees Celsius and both cars will be driven in their most efficient mode. I'll first run the BYD Tang in front with the EV9 following behind with its cruise control set to the furthest distance. Then halfway, we will switch up cars. This way, both vehicles will be driven the same length in clean air.
So I'm starting this test off in the BYD Tang, and I drove this car a few years ago. This is by no means a new car. It's actually quite an old platform, which is also made to accommodate internal combustion engines, in China at least. But this has gotten an update, and this is one of very few 7-seat electric SUVs on the market. And like every other Chinese car, and this is why I really don't like Chinese cars, that it bings and bonks at you for everything. You can't even look at the speedometer for more than 3 seconds or look at your map without it like bonging at you. Pay attention to the road. It's just so annoying. So as I was saying, this is the new Flagship model, which has an updated battery pack, and this is one of few 7-seat electric SUVs on the market. I wanted to test the NIO EL8 also in this test, but NIO didn't have a car for me available this week. And also the Volvo EX90 is another 3-row 7-seat electric SUV, but that is not available yet. There are no press cars here in Norway or anywhere around the world for testing for the media. So that's why we have these two cars. Yes, there are other cars like the Peugeot E5008, but that has a much smaller battery pack if you go for all-wheel drive. And if you go for not all-wheel drive, you can have a big battery pack, but then you don't have all-wheel drive. So maybe I'll test that car sometime in the future. But you know, this car kind of feels old. The infotainment system is strange, but the interior is nice. The seats are nice. The driving position is nice and is actually quite comfortable, though I'm finding myself having to raise my voice a little bit going 120 kilometers an hour. It's not the most silent car. But let's call up Sindra, which just keeps binging on me. Let's call up Sindra and find out what the consumption is in his car. Hello, Sindra.
Hello.
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 So we've been on the road for about 35 kilometers, 20 minutes now. And you want to give us your average consumption and battery percentage?
Average consumption is 28.2.
28.2, okay, yeah?
The percentage is 82%.
So you're at 82% and you started with 88 and I started with 89. I'm at 78% state of charge. Which,
interesting.
Yeah, and according to the car, which only lets me set the trip computer for the last 50 kilometers, it's showing 26.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So that just is a blatant lie. So yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
But okay, so we'll talk to you a little bit later when we get to our turnaround point and do an update again regarding the battery percentage and the consumption. We're now approaching our halfway point. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to the Shell station here. We're gonna switch cars. We're gonna update you guys regarding the consumption and how much battery we have left. This car doesn't have, a normal trip computer with a kilowatt readout that, counts the kilometers and the time and the consumption. It is really weird. And also the fact that you can't turn off driver alert driver monitoring system, it's just a deal breaker for me. It's so annoying. It's just been beeping almost every minute since the last update. If there is a way to turn it off, well, I'm going to put it on the screen now because I'm going to reach out to BYD after this video just to ask them. But as things seem,
from anywhere you can swipe down to get this drop down menu, and then you press the coffee icon. Then you can turn off driver monitoring systems, and when it's off, it is completely off. But if you go from the normal settings, you have to go into something called cabin perception, which is nothing I've ever heard of before, and that's why I wasn't able to find it via the normal menus.
I've been digging in menus and it's just impossible to turn off anything. It's just so annoying. Okay, we're gonna stop here now. The timer stopped and I'm gonna give you guys an update. So this car, as I said, doesn't have, a readout for the kilowatts or kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. It has this past 50 kilometers, 31.4, but I don't know if that's accurate. I'm going to put it on the screen based on the battery pack size and the battery percentage. We're now at 59% state of charge. Let's jump into the EV9 and check out the numbers there, because I'm guessing the consumption there is higher. No, it's actually lower. 29.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and the battery percentage is at 63% stated charge. So it looks like the EV9 is winning. I've now jumped into the EV9 for the remainder of the trip. We actually switched up halfway. And the EV9 is a car that I think I like this better than the BYD Tang overall, but to see my full verdict, I'm going to do a comparison video between these two cars, exterior, interior styling, driving dynamics. We're going to go through the practicality of the interior and also compare them on pricing. That's going to be the next video, so if you don't want to miss out on that video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out a lot and it's completely free for you guys, so thank you very much. But the EV9 is a car, yes, I do like this car, but it is far from my favorite. And also this car does have, those annoying driver assistance systems that bong at you when you're not paying attention to the road. I am paying attention, but maybe I'm a little bit more, vocal in my body language. That's why it's beeping at me, but I'm pretty sure you can turn it off. But it's not nearly as intrusive as in that BYD Tang. But this, not my favorite car, though I do like it. It was actually on my top 5 worst list of new cars I drove in 2024. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad car. It just means of all the new 20 plus cars I drove, this was at the bottom of how impressed I was and how much I liked it. Overall, it is a good package, though it is expensive. It is expensive. You do get a lot of car, like from the driver position here. This is a lot more roomy than that BYD Tang, and also, yeah, the cargo hold there is a lot bigger. But with that being said, I don't like the driving position. I feel like I'm sitting too close to the dashboard. There's not enough reach in the steering wheel, so I feel like I'm driving a bus. I'm sitting like hunched over. And also these seats are not nearly as comfortable as those in that BYD Tang. So overall, a mixed bag. And also it's not as cozy or as luxurious here as in that BYD Tang, though I do think I prefer the ergonomics. There's just like a sense of cheapness here that you don't get in that other car. But one thing I'm going to say, like the way this drives, the body control is a lot better controlled, and also this is a lot quieter, which we're going to reveal at the end of the video, the actual measurements. But yeah, this a lot quieter than the BYD Tang, which is actually quite a bit noisy. After almost 2 hours on the road and having covered almost 200 kilometers, we're now here at our exit. We're gonna stop the timer at 1 hour and 45 minutes, which is a little bit of a slower run than we usually are able to do. Usually it's like 1 hour 42 to 1 hour 44. So that means our actual measured average speed is going to be a little bit lower. But that is because of a little bit of road works on the road now, and also quite a bit of traffic today. Conditions not the worst. It's been wet, it's been a little bit greasy, a little bit damp, and temperatures between +1 and -4 degrees Celsius. So what we're going to do now with both cars, we're going to connect to a charger on each of the cars, and then we're gonna see what charging speed we get after a few hours on the road with passive heating. So no preconditioning of the battery. This car both has automatic and manual preconditioning. We don't do that in this test. We do that in the long trip test. The BYD Tang, not sure if that car has preconditioning or not. Yeah, this station is completely full. So I think I'm gonna have to start doing these tests earlier because yeah, it's like super busy here. But let's put the car into park and I'll show you guys the stats so far. 30.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and we arrived here with 31% state of charge. Okay, so a little bit of a challenge because it is so busy here now to get a charger that actually will reach the cars, because these cars have the charge port on the same side, meaning that we have to find a charger that connects to the same place. So we're gonna let this connect here, and then we're gonna connect the BYD. So we're here with 31% state of charge on the EV9, but curiously enough, 29% state of charge with the BYD Tang. That is interesting because we started with 89% here, no, 88 and 89 here. We're gonna do the calculations at the end of the video. Yeah, this is just still initializing, so we're gonna connect this one also. So both of these two cars are on 800 volt architectures. And if you thought the EV9 was a slow charging vehicle for being on an 800 volt architecture with a peak charging speed of 210 kilowatts, this actually peaks at 170 kilowatts, which is completely unheard for an 800 volt architecture car. That is just weird. 10 to 80%, again, this is like 21 minutes or 22 minutes, and this is 48 minutes. Okay, so Cinder just had to move the car a little bit because it's a little bit tight here. Hopefully that will work, but in the meantime, let's hop over to the EV9 and see what kind of speed we're getting here. So I'm just gonna climb underneath here. I don't know if you can even see that, but yeah, we're getting 95 kilowatts at 33% state of charge, which isn't too bad. I mean, that's okay, but again, if we preconditioned the battery, we would have gotten higher speed. But this video, this test is all about getting the maximum range and the lowest consumption. And that's why we don't precondition the battery, because that would cost energy. So I don't know if it's the charger, like because it's so far away, we found out we could actually pull this cable, the tether here. I'm just gonna hold this down because if there's too much of a gap on the connector to the actual charge port, the charger's not going to communicate properly with the car, and that means it's not going to start the charging. That may be the case, but actually before we started this test, we actually had a few issues trying to get the BYD Tang to charge. So it may just be sensitive to fast charging. It may be these AWD chargers here that's it's sensitive for. I don't know what it is, but we weren't able to start the charging now. Last time we had to change the chargers, but hopefully this is gonna work. And will we get higher speeds than with the Kia EV9? Actually, so that is interesting. So if you don't precondition the battery, similar condition, similar drive or same drive, this actually charges a little bit faster. But let's hop over to the EV9 and see if that has picked up any speed or if it's still charging as slow. Yeah, this is just charging at 97 kilowatts, so not any faster. Now let's take a look at the results, and for the EV9 it's pretty simple and straightforward because this car has a proper trip computer, so the car gives us all the information we need about consumption. So what we do is that we take the usable battery capacity, which is 96.0 kilowatt hours, we divide it by the consumption, 30.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and then we subtract 3% for heat and discharging losses, because running the car on the motorway, there's going to be internal resistance in the battery pack that's going to be dissipated as heat that most cars don't account for. We don't know which cars account for that and don't, so just to be safe, we're going to do the same calculations for every car. And also, once we go below 30% stated charge, the resistance in the battery pack, the losses for discharging is actually higher than from 100 down to 30%. They've done a lot of studies at around 30%, it ramps up to like 1 or 2 times as much. It's not a large amount, but this 3% we, calculate for is going to account for both discharging losses and heat losses. So under today's conditions, that means this car gets a theoretical range of 306 kilometers. And that's not great. That consumption isn't low, but it's not terrible, especially when you compare to the BYD Tang, which on paper is a smaller car with smaller wheels. It's a more aerodynamic shape. But that car, yeah, first off, there's no proper trip computer, so we have to do the calculations, and I did the calculations here where we take the battery pack size and we divide it by the actual percentage that was used. That car used 60%, this car used 58%. I'm not going to bore you with all the math, but when we do the math, that car has a consumption that is 4.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers higher, meaning an average consumption of 35.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And that is pretty darn high. So when you do the calculations, you take the usable battery capacity, which is 108.8 kilowatt hours, divided by that consumption, again, subtracting 3% for heat and discharging losses. That gives the BYD a range under today's conditions of 297 kilometers. A little bit less than this, but considering that battery pack is so much larger, it's surprising that this car, this bigger, less aerodynamic shape, this square box, actually is a lot more efficient. And that is down to this drivetrain, that is down to the efficiency of this platform. And I think that is actually pretty impressive. So guys, let me know what you think about the results of the EV9 versus the BYD Tang. I did not expect this car to actually have more range. I expected it to be more efficient, but because of the big battery pack in that car, I expected that car to actually have a little bit more range. So guys, let me know what you think about the results. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later and goodbye.